Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday afternoon or Friday evening to everyone. And sorry for just running a little bit late. We had another event going, so that got out a little bit later. So we're gonna get started.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. We are Pre-Med CC, a student-led organization established in the fall of 2021. Our goal as an organization was to create an online community for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians.
And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone. We realize that finding guidance and mentorship in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation pre-med students, people that lack the financial resources, or just those that do not know people in the medical field.
One of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home. We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. PST, and on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. PST.
If you aren't able to attend the event, all our sessions are uploaded on our YouTube channel. Many of our sessions will end with Q&A with our speakers. Any questions that you have can be put in the Q&A section on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answered.
After you have attended our event, you can log on to our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today.
If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you'll be awarded a 2-hour mentorship certificate to show that you attended our session today.
If you want to stay connected with our upcoming events or want to tell your pre-med friends about Pre-Med CC, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Pre-Med CC.
Alrighty, well, thank you. And we'll have each person's going to introduce themselves. So we'll start with Karina and go roundabout.
Hi, everyone. My name's Karina. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. I went to undergrad at Loyola. While I was at Loyola, I studied psychology. Originally, I thought I was going to go get my PhD, do research, and I ended up kind of veering off and falling in love with the medical aspect of taking care of patients. And that's kind of what led me to the PA profession. Oh, and I'm also a veteran too. Before going to school, I was in the Marine Corps.
Hooah.
I could go next. I think my name is Athena. I did my undergrad at UC San Diego in human biology. I'm originally from the San Francisco Bay Area, and before going to PA school, I was working as a medical assistant in cardiology. I guess a fun fact about me is I really love the outdoors, so camping and backpacking are really big, I guess, like hobbies of mine, and makes me really happy to be outside.
I can go next. My name's Taylor. I'm from Massachusetts. I did my undergrad at University of Massachusetts Amherst, where I majored in public health, and I did a little bit of microbiology. While I was there, I was a student athlete, so I did track and cross country, and my fun fact is that I still like to run.
I can go. My name is Madison. I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, but I was living in Southern California before starting PA school. I went to USC for undergrad and I studied global health, and then I worked as a medical assistant in primary care. And I guess I'll say my favorite food, which is sushi.
I can go next. My name is Justice Bell. I did undergrad at Pepperdine University, and I'm from Long Beach, California. Before PA school, I worked for 2 years as an EMT, first on the ambulance and then in the emergency room. I guess my fun fact about me is that I have two nephews that I'm excited to see over Thanksgiving break. And yeah, they're all I can talk about.
I can go next. My name is Bahia Nurafkan. I still can see Justice only, but my name is Bahia Nurafkan, and I'm from Iran originally. And but I've been spending the past few years here in Bay Area. I went to UC Davis for undergrad, but before that I went to the Cupertino De Anza Community College, and I did EMT in the ambulance for before going to PA school. I also worked a little bit as a medical assistant too, kind of volunteering. And I think my hobby, if I ever get a chance to do it nowadays, will be I really enjoy training my cats. So uh, that's a fun fact about me. I can show cats how to do things.
Nice. So you're the cat whisperer.
Kind of.
Alrighty. So this is going to be kind of more informal than anything else. So what we're going to do is if you guys have questions, put them in the Q&A section and uh we'll ask the panelist. And so my first question is what part of PA school has been challenging and what part of it is not as challenging as you thought it was going to be? And we could start with whoever wants to go.
I can
Yeah.
go.
Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
One of the things that's been really challenging is just like the amount of things that we need to learn. But one of the things that kind of surprised me was just being in a program where everybody's in all of the same courses and learning all the same things. So you have a lot more people that you can work with, whereas like in undergrad, everybody's taking different courses and on different schedules. So you're always kind of like alone in what your study schedule is and like when your next exam is. So it's kind of nice to have that like team environment of everybody's kind of going through it together.
Yeah, I'll definitely second that. It's so much information at one time. Like this is nothing compared to undergrad, I could say. And it's like, how do you prioritize when you're given so much information and you just feel like you're catching up when you get behind again. Um, but something that I have learned is somebody told me when I first got to Stanford that you're going to get comfortable with the feeling of being uncomfortable. And I'm like, oh, that's not me. Like, I have to be organized. Like, that's not like, I can't get used to that feeling. And you really do get used to that feeling because, like, you get uncomfortable during a lot of like your exams or after your exams, you're kind of just thinking about, like, oh my God, did I answer that right? Or when you're being put in clinical cases, and you're just kind of like, oh, how am I going to handle this? And you just get used to that feeling. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to add that in addition to the studies here at Stanford, like we do have the opportunity to take like electives with our program and participate in different student organizations. So I think something that I didn't really expect coming into PA school is just how much I'd be able to be involved in these different things. Like I thought that I would just be like studying all the time. I'd only have time for studying, but being able to figure out how to balance like helping run student orgs and being able to do different like events like this and like be able to still exercise and like see friends and like family and all that stuff. It was definitely I think a challenge like beginning PA school to balance all of it and all of like the interests and all the advocacy that I still wanted to continue doing as a PA student, just to kind of fill that like cup, because I do love like giving back to community and like service. But then also I think like it changes per quarter because of our course load and just like that constant balance I think can be challenging, but we still figure out how to do it, which I think is surprising to me how it still works out in the end. But yeah, it's PA school is hard, but it's also really fun.
Yeah, I kind of want to build off that. I think like I mean, I think everyone going into PA school expects and knows that the coursework is going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging. You're going to be studying like a lot of hours of the day. And so yeah, I'm definitely not here to say like that it's surprising how easy it was. It's not easy. But I think the challenging part is like Athena was saying, is building your schedule around like keeping yourself sane, honestly doing the things that you still love to do. I think was the challenging part because you come in so like ready to study hard and to get these good grades that like it's not necessarily the schoolwork that will fall behind because yeah, that's already your main like thought process to do this, but then you realize like, oh, like I haven't eaten today, like, or like, oh, I haven't worked out in 2 weeks. So like things like that. So like it challenged me to really, I mean, it's still challenging me to continue to try to build a schedule that like keeps me healthy and keeps me like, sane and everything like that. So I think that's the challenging part, but because there's so many like just different resources and things that you could do here, it's some of it is fun. So I don't know if it's like it's a little bit of self-punishment, but like I don't know. I kind of like the hustle of it, and I kind of like the challenge of having to try to build your schedule and everything.
And I have to add, even though it's very challenging, this is stuff that I've always wanted to know. And like, it's like, yes, it's hard, but it's like you do enjoy it. It's like it's like a love-hate relationship, you know? So
I actually think it's funny that you say that, Karina, because honestly, sometimes when I'm studying or when I actually get a chance to like sit down and study, like I enjoy studying. Like it's kind of fun, like learning. I mean, like Karina said, this is stuff that we've been waiting to learn for so long. We've worked so many years and so many hours, preparing to come to PA school. So it's like to finally be here and have the breadth of knowledge that we are being like retaining and learning now. It's just like it's fun, it's fascinating, and yeah, it is hard, but it's also like we want to do this, so it's fun at the same time, like I said.
Yeah, I can hop in here too. I agree with everything that everyone has said. I would say for me, the hardest part has just been like you really have to like put yourself in kind of like uncomfortable situations that like you wouldn't normally be in. Like, for example, we all did IVs on each other the other day, and like that's a little scary, like poking your friend with a needle and hoping that, sorry, that's my roommate's dog. He might bark a little bit. Oh no, Bruno. But anyway, so like that aspect of it, I think is challenging. But on the flip side, like everyone is in the same boat and everyone is nervous. Everyone is like excited about things. So I think that that has been like not surprising, but just like so comforting how like amazing our class is and how uplifting and supportive everyone is. So I think that that's made PA school a lot more enjoyable.
Thank you, Madison. I think like I enjoy that part of the medical school, I mean PA school the most, because we have medical students also like moving along with us. We see them every day almost. So I feel like having that community really like boost your performance and lift you up at the time that you really need.
Okay, the
All
next
right.
question.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Someone is asking if you recommend gap years between undergrad and PA school.
I would say, yeah, I recommend it. I was definitely one in undergrad that I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go straight through. But I'm really glad that I didn't. And then I took those gap years to like have some time to be in the clinical setting. I worked in EMS and then I worked in the ER, and just having the opportunity to meet with patients and get comfortable, so that then you go to PA school and you can learn the things you need to know, but you also know how to talk to a patient, and like you don't have to learn all of it at the same time. You just kind of have some familiarity with the environment.
I also definitely recommend getting a gap year. I feel like I got a gap year. I didn't want to do it, but I think that was the best decision I made. I did the stuff that I really wanted to do. I traveled, I relaxed, because let's face it, undergrad is not like a piece of cake. We are in grad school and it's a hard program. It seems like undergrad was hard, but I do remember that I was having a tough time in some of the courses in undergrad too. So you want to have that relaxed time before moving into something that is pretty challenging. And as Taylor said, you do want to have that backbone of patient care experience, because the program moves pretty quickly. And before you know it, you are in clerkship, like caring for patients. It comes pretty quickly. And I feel like you don't have to be super I don't know, really, really good with the patient care, but just getting comfortable being around patient, those jargons, and like being around nurses and being in a team really helps you to get comfortable and move faster.
Yeah, I agree. I took 2 gap years before starting. So I had 1 year where I was just working and building up hours. And then I had 1 year where I was applying, interviewing, and then kind of once I got in, then I could kind of relax and enjoy that time. But I mean, I think it really depends on your situation and how many clinical hours you can get while you're in undergrad. I think if you can get a lot while you're in school, you could go straight, but I would say I think every single person in our class took at least 1 gap year. I think that it's really valuable just to like have that experience working. Like I worked in primary care and it has helped so much with like everything. And like everyone has said, just knowing how to interact with patients, knowing how to interact with physicians, PAs, scribes, like all the different people you work with is just going to be so invaluable. And I think that that's something really unique about PA school, is you have to have that experience. And I think that it makes you a better student.
Sorry that I'm jumping back in because I think it's important. Madison just remind me of it. And all these experiences gonna help you with your interviews. Like this is like very important. Uh, Getting into PA school, it's very competitive, and how you pull off those interviews are very important. I do remember that I pull a lot of uh, from my experiences at work with my colleagues and with the patients. And I think if you don't have it, it's going to be a little bit difficult answering those questions at the interview.
I definitely agree with my classmates here. Something I think I could add is another thing that I did during that gap year was take like the extra classes that I had to get for prereqs for PA school. So instead of like me throwing it on top of my undergraduate units when I was finishing my bachelor's, I just waited till after graduating to take those extra 2 classes that weren't offered through like my university, just so like I could focus better on those individual courses and make sure I did really well in them. Also, another thing that I advise to everybody is that year is also super helpful for you to figure out yourself too. Because like once you start PA school, like you're a student and then you're a practicing provider. And in that time, there's gonna be like it's challenging. You'll definitely have some times where you're gonna hit some lows and you're gonna need to figure out like how you can handle those moments and what you can use to bounce back. Like for me, it was like me using that time to figure out like, oh, like I like sewing, or like I like going on hikes like when I'm feeling down, or like if I need to like step back and like refresh and just like feel rejuvenated again. Like I feel like taking time off of school really helped me like rehone like friendships and like reconnect with family and stuff, like rebuilding all those social networks, and just like people to lean on, that I feel like are super, super like helpful now that I'm in PA school. And if I ever need a break, like I know how to kind of like step back, like I said, and just like rejuvenate and just be ready and refreshed to keep going.
I'll also add on that. So I was actually pre-med, and during my gap year was really when I figured out what I wanted to do. I think I didn't have a real idea of how healthcare worked until I took those years off. And there I was able to not only get my clinical experience, because most PA schools do require about 1,000 hours of clinical experience. So I was just trying to like get that for either med school or PA school. But during that time, I was also able to shadow different providers. It was nurse practitioners, PAs, physicians, and I really understood how healthcare worked and where I saw myself in. So I think it's just important, just so you have a overall knowledge of what you're getting yourself into. And yeah, so yep.
So this is a question that's come up on various questions, and I think we could just answer that. People wanted to know how did you complete your 1,000 to 2,000 hour requirements for patient care, and how were you able to secure that?
Well, I think this kind of ties into what we've been talking about taking gap years. If you're working full time for probably at least a year, you'll probably get to between 1,000 to 2,000 hours, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so I know like when I first heard that figure, it's like, oh my goodness, that's so many hours. Like I have to chart them and do all this. It's not really the case. You just more so need to find it like, an entry job to get these hours. And if you work for it, I mean, if you do like overtime and stuff, and you could do it probably in less than a year, but kind of like what we were saying, like you just want to take a little bit of time to figure out what you want to do, what type of medicine you want to practice, hone in on your patient care skills, those hours will come. And in terms of like keeping track of them, it's just more so like, oh, I've worked for, 2 years, working 40 hours a week, okay, how much is that? And then you subtract like a couple for maybe sick time or time that you missed. But it's like, I don't think anybody kept a log or anything. At least I didn't keep a log. Maybe not speak for anybody else.
I know also like most people are medical assistants. California has a little bit stricter rules with medical assistants, but where I was at in Chicago, they didn't require a certification or anything like that. So I kind of just got the job at a fertility clinic, and I also worked in internal med for a little bit. Um, so yeah, you could be a medical assistant, like Justice said, he was an EMT. There's some people who scribe. So yeah.
Only thing that I'll add is make sure you're like cross-referencing what the school counts as patient care hours, and if you don't know, then you can always call them or send like an email to admissions because they do vary. Like not by too much, but like just keep that in mind.
I also want to add that many school uh, consider volunteer work also as a patient care. I know that some of them they wanted to be paid, but I had a tons of volunteer work, and I did that throughout my undergrad. And I submitted all of those to every school that I applied as a patient care experience. Those are also very valuable. Like, don't you think that, oh, because I remember when I was applying, uh, because it was around the COVID time too, and I couldn't get a job at the beginning of it. It was stressing me out, and I contacted a few schools, and I found out that, oh, okay, I'm not that behind because I have a lot of volunteer work, patient care in my bag too. So just keep in mind if you have done any volunteer work, like a student-run clinics that you were part of in undergrad, or for example, I just for fun, I was volunteering 1 day a week at the primary care that I just like to hang out there. And I also submitted those hours, and it became highlights of my application.
In terms of finding positions, at least for me, so the job that I found, it was just because I reached out to an instructor for an EMT course I was taking who happened to be a PA. I reached out to them, shadowed her, and then later got a job at that clinic. So I guess I mean to share that just to say, like, if there's somebody that you want to reach out to, like, just do it. The worst they can say is no. And it's like you just never know where that opportunity is going to lead you. But aside from that, like, at least at my university, there was a Facebook page where sometimes like in our pre-PA club, like they would post up like job opportunities, or like Facebook groups for like the community. They would post up like job opportunities. It was mostly medical assistant, or just like, yeah, I think like Indeed. I don't know if that's still a thing, but I think I was on there as well. And just like networking, talking to your peers, seeing like where if they've worked in any places. Yeah.
I would say like also just don't be afraid to apply for things, because I know like I got my EMT license after I graduated, and then I was trying to find jobs, and everyone was like, you need a year to 3 years of experience, and I was like, I don't have that, like where am I going to apply? But I finally got an EMT job, and then once I was able to start working at the hospital, I had a little bit of experience, but I also found them bringing in a lot of people that didn't have any experience, even though like their applications would say that you needed 2 to 3 years. So like even if those things are written down, like still take the chance and try to apply, because especially if you show that you like have a passion and you want to do more in medicine, it'll go far.
Yeah, I could just say that I got my job with no experience, so thanks. Just do it.
I'm seeing a lot of questions about students who are thinking of applying by taking one gap year, but not starting their patient clinical experiences until the year that they are applying. And I guess they want to know, like, if you have any advice or if you recommend them holding off an additional year just to make sure they have those under their belt before they submit their applications.
I guess. Go ahead, Madison.
Okay. Um, so kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, it's really dependent on how many hours you can get while you're in undergrad. Um, I would say look at all the schools that you're wanting to apply to. A lot of them have minimum hours, and some of the minimums are like 2,000 hours, and that's a year of working full time. But if you work like part-time while you're in undergrad and then have some hours by the time you apply, like in that one gap year, I think it could be okay. And there are people in our class that did that. But if you don't have the opportunity to really build up hours during undergrad, it might be kind of hard just to reach that minimum amount by only taking one gap year, but it is possible.
I guess I want to clarify, does this mean like the person would be taking one gap year and then applying for the next cycle, or like they're applying and starting their hours in the same year? Like, because the CASPA opens in April. So if you start like your hours in January, that would be a tight time frame.
I think that's what they were asking, like if they were starting their hours at the same time as applying. And yeah, I guess that answers the question for them.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think Madison mentioned it. It's some schools have a minimum, and some of them like don't have like very many hours required, whereas some like have a lot of hours required. So it really depends on what programs you're looking at. Like definitely like do your research and see like which schools don't need too many hours if that's something that somebody wants to do.
You also have to think about this. So it's kind of expensive to apply to PA school. So you want to make sure you have the best application you could possibly have. Because I mean, if you have to do it a second time, then go ahead. But like the thing is like if you could just get it done the first time around and get accepted, then yeah, you just want to like increase your odds, and having that clinical experience will do that.
So this is one that come up on a couple of other ones too. People are asking about if you take classes at community colleges, um, did those count, and are they looked up upon favorably or unfavorably?
I know I took my anatomy and physiology at a community college. Um, I didn't take it during my undergrad, and I don't think it had any effect on my application. It was just another course listed. So I think it's fine either way.
I think I took most of my classes at the community college, and I got few acceptance. I think as long as you have them, I don't think they really care where you got them. And your grade matters. So
Yeah, I also took a few classes also. I needed to finish a few prereqs, and I ended up doing it at a community college. Um, I think honestly what PA schools care about is like when you're interviewing, you're already there and like you already qualify, they're going to accept your community college hours. It's like what's important is your story. Like, why are you here, right? What can you contribute to medicine? And you want to be able to really do that. And I think that community college students have such a unique background, like they have such a unique experience, and yeah, you could definitely highlight that in your interview on like what you learned from going to a community college or something like that.
This is more of a fun question. So someone asked, what does a day in your life look like? What time do you begin your day? And when do you study?
Um, I'll go. So a day in my life is a little crazy. I usually wake up around 6 and I go for a run. Sometimes it's with classmates, sometimes it's by myself. And then I go to class. Class is usually from 8:30 to 11:30. Then sometimes I do another workout with a classmate, and other times I study during lunch. And then we have class again from 1:30 to 4 or 5:30. And then I usually come home and have dinner and then try to review what we went over for the day or like prepare for whatever the next assignments are. And then I usually go to bed around like 10.
Okay. Oh, no, you go.
Oh,
You
yeah,
can
okay. I was like, that's beautiful. So mine is a lot crazier. It depends really. It depends on what time of the day you're more productive. I'm more of a kid night owl, I think American people say. So I wake up at 7. Yeah, and same thing, go to class, but for the lunchtime that Taylor like studies, I usually get my workout done at that time and do a little bit, just a tiny bit of studying while I'm eating something for lunch. Then I go to class and I get home and I'm studying till 12, 11:30, like not reviewing, actually studying. And yeah, every day. And we have off days. We have weekends and also one day of the week in Stanford, which is a blessed. To on Wednesday we don't have classes usually unless we want to get take an elective. So on that day, I'm just studying from morning to afternoon, usually done by like 9:30. Try to see some friends and family, and I start again tomorrow.
Okay, you guys don't want to know my schedule. My schedule is horrible. Um, I'm a morning person. I used to go to the gym in the mornings, but PA school has won. And now I wake up at 6 and I kind of do about 2 hours of studying before class. And then I go to class and absorb as much information as I can from there. During lunch, I try to study, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And then we have classes until like 5:30, and then I'll get home, eat, and then study. So it's not really like that eventful.
Yeah, just really quickly, I will say that taking a little bit of a different approach, my day looks different every day. Because I feel like I'm just kind of improvising a lot of the times. And I think what part of that is because like I mean, our quarter changes between quarters. So like by the end of the quarter, I'm sure I'll have a schedule, but it's gonna look different than the last quarter. But I will like you're gonna have the things that you're always doing, such as school. So that's pretty much like either 8:30 to 3:30 on Mondays or 8:30 to 5:30 on most other days except Wednesday. And then you're just kind of looking for the time that's best for you to study. So for me, that's like sometimes it's right after I get out of class, sometimes I don't have it. Um, so I do try to really like prioritize my weekends to study because just the week takes a lot out of me and I don't have the energy to really like sit down and study. I'll go over some flashcards and maybe we'll answer some questions, things like that, that are kind of like passive. But to actually like learn new material, I'll try to just go like really, really like aggressively during the weekend to do that. But some people really enjoy their weekends, so like It's just going to depend on what works best for you. And luckily, we have our first quarter to kind of figure that out, which is why I love this program.
Okay, I can talk about mine. I agree with Justice though, like it really is dependent on the week. So I would say I am not a morning person at all. So I wake up at the last possible second that I can. So I probably wake up around like 7:45, 7:55-ish. And then we have class from 8:30 to 11:30. During lunch, I try to get some studying done. But normally I'll just like take a second, like go on TikTok for a second, like relax, eat my lunch. I don't like to study while I eat. That's kind of like a rule I have for myself. I like to like go on my phone or like chat with friends or something. That way I'm not like I can take that time and not be studying. But then I'll try to study for a little bit and then go to class. And then after, normally I'll go on like a nice long walk or like some sort of workout, come back, shower, cook dinner, maybe study a little bit more if we have an exam coming up, or like I'll really just relax. And I'm kind of the same where I really try to do the majority of my studying on Wednesdays and the weekend if I'm not doing anything that weekend, because I'm just so tired by the end of the day and I just want to like relax and watch reality TV. And but yeah, it just really depends on the week. Like we have an exam next week, so this week I've been doing a lot more studying at night than I normally would.
I guess I'll go. No. Um, yeah, I guess I wake up around 7 to 7:30, somewhere around there. It depends on the day. I think basically just like Justice and Madison said, it depends on the day how I guess much I'm going to study. So I'm in the same course, of course, 8:30 to 11:20. At lunchtime, it really depends how like if I'm feeling like studying, if I'm like feeling up for it, because sometimes it's like 3 hours of like a lot of material and I just need to take a second to just like chat with friends or like go on a walk, just like breathe some air, sit out in the sunshine. Um, Sometimes I eat and study, depends. And then sometimes I have a meeting at lunch, so I won't really have time to like study during that time. And then I'll have to like kind of push that for like after we get out of our afternoon classes. Um, but yeah, sometimes in the afternoon I don't even like have energy to study. So then I'll just like throw on a TV show and watch with my roommates or like go on a run and then see if that like re-energizes me to study later into the night. Because I'm like more of a night owl when it comes to studying. So I could study till like 12 and then go to sleep, repeat the next day.
Yeah, and you have to find something that doesn't burn you out because like right now we have exams coming up, so like everyone said, it varies on the week. But like try to plan something like after the like an exam to just like de-stress. Yeah, because sometimes like it does get studying does it becomes overwhelming at some point. But yeah, so in PA school, just make sure to schedule those little moments for yourself and, you know, either a night out or date night or whatever.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up. Because I'm like, as right now, I'm myself facing a little bit of a burnout because I think like I pushed a little bit too much, because I was a little bit scared of this quarter. And now that I really have to study, I don't have the energy anymore because I pushed really hard at the beginning of this quarter, and it's just really important to it's a learning curve and it changes every year as you go through the program, and every quarter is different, every term is different. So it just, yeah, taking care of yourself and finding a balance. I have not found a balance. So just, I don't want to like say here that I have got it together. I don't know how to balance this yet. Like I'm learning as we go. But yeah, just it's very important. And I think Atina was talking about that earlier. It's just in that gap year, I think I in another panel talked about that too, that it's really important to get to know yourself, know how you like I learned that in PA school of how to relax. Before that, I did not know that I needed to relax, and have to take care of my mental health a little bit, like, yeah, more, seriously. So get to know yourself, take that 1 year gap, see what makes you happy, so you can use those information not in the PA school and not face a burnout like me.
Another question I'm seeing is, what advice do you have for someone that's planning to apply to PA school? And how did you research the schools that you were applying to, and what brought you to Stanford?
One of the biggest things for me in terms of researching for PA schools was location. Um, I think there are a lot of good accredited PA programs in the nation, and there are going to be things that you care more about once you like do your research, depending, like what programs they may offer, what research capabilities they have, how much community outreach that they do. But a big thing is going to be location. I did not want to go somewhere where it was snowing. I just didn't. I'm from Southern California, and I've been here my whole life. So that was a really big, portion of my application. So I would say don't underestimate that. Like go somewhere that you can see yourself, spending the next 3 years and even beyond, because you're going to be making professional connections there. But outside of that, just look at some of the things that they stress and some of the things that either the students there talk about or like the faculty talks about. If you can talk to students though at a given program, that's going to give you the best insight on what the program's like and kind of to answer all your questions. So
Yeah, I think when I was looking at programs, I first started with I don't want to take the GRE. So then I looked up all the programs that didn't require the GRE or the PCAT or whatever. And I'm like, okay, these are my schools. So now I just have to choose on like what I want from here. Um, things that were important to me were like, do they care about underserved communities? Also, like, what size is the class? I kind of wanted a small class size just because I wanted, if I needed help with anything, I wanted for like one, my class to have that like camaraderie. And I also wanted to be able to have that attention from the professor if I needed it, or that extra help. Um, I also wanted to, what made me choose Stanford was the leadership aspect. They're training PAs to become leaders in our field. So that was really important to me because I do plan to go back to Chicago and I have my own mission when I go back there. Hopefully I can make a positive change for the PA profession and for underserved communities. So I really wanted that training early on in PA school. So that's what made me choose Stanford.
Yeah,
Another thing, oh, no, you go, Thea.
sorry. Um, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah. Yeah, I agree with Karina. She hit a lot of the points for me as well. The leadership aspect, the small class size, the like-mindedness in the mission towards serving underrepresented populations. I think another thing, in addition for me for choosing Stanford, was proximity to my support systems. So my family lives like an hour and a half away from here. At a time of starting school, like my partner lived in LA, so I feel like it was just like close to around people who were really important to me, and who have been like really influential in like me and my like presence here in PA school. And when I'm like starting to feel down, like I have people around me who I can like see easily, and like be in the same time zone at least, you know. But yeah.
One thing I just wanted to add is when you're coming up with your list, like, don't discount schools because you think you won't get in. Like, you want to have those reach schools. Like, never in a million years would I think that I would have ended up at Stanford and had a chance of getting in here. And I think that once you start looking at the statistics and the data and the average GPA and hours and all of that, it can become like really overwhelming, and it can make you feel like, oh, like I don't have that number or whatever, but you do have something really important and something really unique and special that makes you you. So yeah, I would say when you're kind of thinking about where you want to go, location is huge. the mission of the school, and just what you want out of a program. So what everyone said. But yeah, don't let like the statistics and the numbers like discourage you from applying somewhere that you really want to go.
And I would just add that a lot of the schools spend a lot of money updating their websites, so they have a lot of information on their websites, from like placement to, so there's a lot of data you could pull from there. So, like how many average hours their students had that were accepted into their school, GPA, all that good stuff. So do a little bit of research. This is the question that's come up on a couple of times in terms of difference between why they chose physician assistant versus nurse practitioner, and why you guys chose PA, and then also as a potential of physician assistant saturation, which I've not heard because the Department of Labor statistics, it's like one of the top 10 jobs in the future. So I would just say if anybody tells you physician assistants are saturated, that's not true. It's like I said, it's in the Department of Labor's top 10 positions. Now, granted, if you want to be a physician assistant in dermatology in Beverly Hills, that might be a little bit more challenging, but that's, but anyway, so y'all want to share that?
Yeah, I guess I'll share because I struggled with this, man. I took the whole gap time. I was really trying to figure out like med school, PA, NP, like man, that was a tough choice. But I think the PA profession, you could switch specialties. I've met many PAs who have done it. There's a few PAs that actually work part-time in one specialty and part-time in another one. And I'm like, that sounds cool. Another thing is how we're trained, that really also convinced me. Nurse practitioners more like go towards the nursing model, and PAs are more trained like similar to that of physicians under the medical model. And actually our PA program is part of the medical, we have a lot of classes with our medical students. So it's pretty cool that they could see how I'm being trained and I could see how they're being trained. And it's pretty like, it's pretty hands-on. We're learning block systems. So it was just the training overall that I felt it was good quality training. And yeah, so that's kind of what convinced me.
Yeah, I can second what Karina said. I also like the flexibility to be able to change specialties and like have that option if my interests change in the future. Also, I just like really like being part of a team and knowing that there would always be somebody like I can bounce ideas off of and kind of work together with. Yeah.
I think another very important part of choosing the path that you want to take is just thinking about the time. I mean, in all honesty, timing, finances, what your life currently looks like, how quickly you want to get into your profession, and then kind of balance that with like, what you want it to be. And so I think for a lot of us, like PA school just offered the best combination of time in school, salary once we're done, as well as like just finances throughout, like paying for the actual education. So these are like big things that you do have to think about, because each program and each profession's path is going to be completely different in those aspects. So really look at them, what works for you, and then that will help you make that decision.
Yeah, I think I'll just add on a little bit more. Sorry, I'm chatting a lot. But the timing of the school, it's only a lot of programs are only 2 years, and I'm just like I need to get in the field already. Like I've done a lot of other jobs. Like I was in the Marine Corps. I'm like I just want to be working as a provider already. Another thing is, hold on, sorry, my dog's making a bunch of noise. Yeah. Give me a second. Yeah, give me 1 second. I lost my train of thought. Go ahead, guys.
I think for this, I never really considered going the NP route just because like I didn't get my bachelor's in nursing. I think that if I had started off with that, then I definitely would have gone the NP route. I think when you're actually working in the field, PAs and NPs have a very similar role, but it just comes down to training and how you're trained. Like Karina said, we're trained a lot more, like the medical students are trained. So it's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of like approaching medicine. And I think that I was kind of more drawn to that side of it because it's more based on like making diagnoses and stuff like that. But I mean, I can also talk about why not physician, but that wasn't this question, so I'll hold off. But yeah, I think that PA is like kind of it's such a great path. Like it's 2 to 3 years, and then you're in the field, you're working, you have that lateral mobility. There's just a lot of flexibility. So yeah, that's why I chose it.
You can also shadow MP. I shadowed an MP, like a couple of MPs, and for PA school, as you probably all know, like shadowing PAs for most of schools are requirements. So in addition to PAs, I shadowed some MPs. As Madison said, the roles are very similar, but when you talk to them about their training and their approach to medicine, then it's up to you to see if this is the approach you want to take in terms of caring for your patients, or you want to take PA approach, which is a lot more like m- uh, medicine than nursing, as we all mentioned already. I think shadowing gonna help you, like talking to nurse practitioners. I feel like here in Stanford, I shadowed a couple of nurse practitioners that, as my defense said, like the job is the same. It's just the way of thinking is different. They end up getting trained for the job they do, and the job with PA becomes very, very similar. But in terms of training, like when you're in a school, what you're enjoying to learn medicine from that aspect is what makes the difference, basically. And FYI, there are some schools that they do not require nursing as a bachelor degree. It used to be like only nursing, but apparently they added a programs that you don't really need a nursing degree to continue as a nurse practitioner.
Anyone else? And the only thing that I would just add is make sure you do your research because some states, nurse practitioners have certain limitations and physician assistants. And so there's like, it's like 50 states for 50 different things. And so um, just look at that as well. Um, everybody, this is something everybody's asking is how many of you had hours of clinical experience before applying?
Yeah, I think
You
it's
said how many? I'm
required.
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I didn't hear the question. Can you say that again?
Oh, people just want to know how many hours of clinical experience did you have um, before applying to PA school? I would just add is just knowing y'all had more than the minimum. So just want to throw that out there. But go ahead.
I can start. I think I had about 2,500 hours. It was like a mix of different things because I did like a little research in undergrad. I had some jobs that I like wasn't really sure if they would really count or not because I worked in infection control for a little while during COVID. So that like wasn't really a clinical job, but it was in the hospital. So there was some things like that. And then I worked as an EMT and an ED tech. So that was probably about 1,500 of the hours. And then I had volunteered in the hospital a little bit too. But again, like when you're looking at schools, make sure you look at how they look at the hours because some don't count volunteer. I've even heard some, I don't know if it's a rumor, but some say like with EMT, because of like transport EMTs, sometimes they'll like take off some of your hours because you're not always with patients when you're an EMT, depending on like the place you're working. So just be careful with those kind of things.
Yeah, just to answer to that, because I saw that too, and I think I asked someone about it. Essentially, there's no way of checking that. And as you're working as an EMT, you are getting patient hours. So I don't really think that's fair to say like transport time doesn't count or something like that. And again, they have no way of checking that. So and we don't really have any way of logging that either. So you're really just putting the hours that you worked as an EMT. Um, I had about between 2000 and 2500, somewhere around there. And I think the number is a little bit less important and more so like how you can talk, like what those hours gave you, like because they're gonna ask you some version of that question in any interview that you're gonna be in. So like, sure, you might have less than someone else. Someone else might have 10,000, but like if they can't give you anything that they learned, like those 10,000 hours are useless. So really make sure like the hours that you are getting, try to make the most of them and be ready to talk about like what you learned there, not only like medically, actually not as importantly medically, but more so just like in life, what type of life skills that they give you, that will better prepare you for PA school and your career as a PA.
Yeah, I could just say to track your hours though. One thing is I did for the certain job, like current job that I applied for, is that have your pay stubs at the end of the year have all the hours that you worked in that year on there. So that's kind of like the gold standard of like if anybody questions that, just save that and you could show them that. That's kind of like official. That's what's reported to the state and federal government, everything. So
Yeah, I did actually have one program that required me to go to my boss and like get a printout of how many hours I worked for them. So that was like a little crazy, but yeah, sometimes they do.
I think I had somewhere around 12 to 1500 in that ballpark. But yeah, it's hard to really tell because some of them were like paid hours, some of them were volunteer hours. So I don't know how many, like how they that's how I indicated it in my CASPA. Like I put some of my volunteer hours as patient care experience because they were more like hands-on experiences. And then I explained that in the description. But at the end of the day, I never checked with the program to ask them if they like counted it in that certain way. But for medical assistant, at least I think I put around 1200 for sure. Um, but yeah, I think Justice's response was really like he like nailed it. You really want to be able to speak on how that experience impacted you and the skills that you gained from it. I think at the end of the day, that's what's valuable about those hours.
And then also like PA schools, when you're thinking about interviews, they're also going to ask you why PA, why not NP, why not MD, and I think that with your clinical experience, you'll also be able to answer that question, like, oh, I observed how PAs worked in this healthcare setting. And, it helps you be able to tell your story, whatever clinical experience you had. So also like be selective when you choose, like some people are just like, oh well, I just want to do this just to make the hours count. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you didn't, like everyone said, like if you didn't really learn anything out of that experience, then it's not really meaningful and you can't really talk about it, right? So just be very selective.
Thank you, Karina, for bringing that up. I during COVID time, I did I think 6 months or even 8 months of in-home support services, which is for many schools. I called them and stuff, and they were like, "Oh no, we don't accept in-home support services," which is basically you're taking care of a person who needs help with the house chores and like everything, or medication. You're taking care of a person who needs help medically or just for a living, which doesn't really seem like a patient care experience, but a lot of school like accepted me for that because I talked about it and of how much it is this experience was important for me and how much I learned from it and how much medicine I learned from that. Because I remember like one of the job that I had with that was just making sure the person I took care of has all the medication at the right time because of the different, like, I don't know, condition that was going on. Like it really depends what you taking out of it, because you gonna talk about it. It's you're doing that job for you to learn about medicine and learn about patient care, learn about like communication, and they want to see that because I said it already, PA school moves so fast. They want you to have something under your belt moving into that chaos.
Other questions I'm seeing are about interviews, and a lot of people are asking, how did you prepare for them, and if you have any tips.
You go to it.
I didn't prepare too much. One of the things I did was I was working in the ER, so one of the residents that I was working with, I was able to work with her and do like a practice interview, and she gave me some tips. But the big thing is just like think through your clinical experience and your different jobs and like find times where you overcame things or worked with somebody when it was difficult. And like those are the things that come up over and over again, just like how you handle those situations, and really try to figure out what it is that you want to tell them about those situations and like what your thought process was going through them.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that Taylor said. Kind of how I started, I read the Physician Assistant Interview Guide by Savannah Perry, which is amazing. She's amazing. And she has a ton of questions in that are like very common interview questions. So I created a Google Doc and kind of typed out my responses to those. And then I would like record myself on photo booth speaking it out. Which was good because I could look at myself and kind of be like, oh, I need to get rid of my ums and likes and everything. And then I also did some mock interviews. I did one through the PA platform, which was really helpful, but also you can just do them with like friends and family, like Taylor was saying, and that's great. You definitely don't need to pay to do them.
I actually took a very similar approach to that. I also had that book, and then I would Google questions about like, okay, like what are they going to ask me? I also typed up like things to think because like on the spot, I judge myself, but I think I'm a very bad interviewer. So I'm like, I have to prepare for this. This is like, if I'm getting an interview, it's like I can't mess this up. So I also recorded myself too, did the same exact thing actually. So that's great advice. Another thing that my clinic knew I was applying to PA school. So the front desk ladies would also research questions and then they would just ask me randomly on the spot, like when I was working. And then I would answer it and they would judge me on it, which was like great, but like it was pretty good because it like kept me on my toes. So if you have somebody that you could ask, like, hey, just ask me these questions and give me feedback on how I did, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I like literally same. I feel like my interviewing skills aren't the best. Like I'm a big rambler, so I definitely had to like kind of practice my responses to make sure that I knew when was a point where I would often trail off. So I could just know like, okay, don't go that way, like stay on topic. But my coworker, she did a mock interview with me, which was really nice of her. She was able to like just tell me even like my background, like, oh, maybe like tidy up your bed a little bit because it like, it looks like a mess back there. Like just things I wasn't really thinking of, but in addition to that, like, yeah, going through a prep book, there's some videos on YouTube where you can watch people doing mock interviews, so that's kind of helpful. Yeah.
Another question that I saw come up was, how do you finance and pay and live while not working?
So my situation is a little different. One of the things going in, I'm a first generation student, so I knew that I wanted some support to back me up. So I actually applied for one of the Navy programs through the military. So I'm in the HSCP program. So they pay me while I'm in school. And then after I graduate, I will serve with them for 3 years. And then I can continue on. But I know that I like have that job and I have some financial security while I'm in school too. So it kind of helps me be able to concentrate on getting through school.
Yeah, I'm in a similar situation as Taylor, and Jubin just threw it actually into the chat right now. But I have the NHSC scholarship, so they pay for my tuition and they also give like a monthly stipend to help with like living expenses. And then after I basically commit like I think 2 or 3 years, so basically depending on how many years they fund your education, you essentially pay back in working in a primary care in an underserved community. So that's basically like I'm like lined up to work in primary care after, which is great. That's what I want to do in the first place. So it's like a win-win situation.
And then if you're not able to just get certain, things that you even apply for, one thing that can help is, I mean, and everyone hates it, but loans. The good thing about I think about this program, about using them, is the fact that we will be done soon and we will be making a solid salary right out of school. So although it sucks to pay back loans, it's very doable to in a timely manner. Um, and so, yeah, so if you're just not able to get some of the things that you're going for, like a fallback plan can't just be loans and it'll work. They're going to offer you more than you need. And so you can always reduce it to the amount of extra that you need to get by. I would always say do more to start off so your expenses and everything. And then later on, maybe the next year or anything like that, you can always reduce. Um, so that's a fallback that you might have to do. Also savings. So you're gonna get patient care hours. So I would recommend like trying to save aggressively during that time to help you during this time in PA school.
Yeah, and starting salary of a PA, I think in California is I think 160,000. So, and rest of the country is a little bit different, but it's six figures. So you'll pay it back and you'll always have a job. This is something people want to ask is about letters of recommendation and what how you guys secured those.
I can talk about this. So I would say kind of the general recommendation for letters of recommendation for PA school is one PA, one academic person, so like a professor or maybe like an academic counselor, someone that can speak on your ability like to do well in classes. And a physician. I was actually just looking at Stanford. I know Stanford requires or they recommend those three. So I would say I would try to get one of each if you can. But like for instance, if you don't work with any PAs or if you don't work with any MDs, it's okay. Just I would definitely suggest having a medical provider and an academic professor. Ask early because people get really busy, especially professors, because when it's time to submit letters of recommendation, it's also finals time and grading time. So I would just let them know early, put that on their plate early. I had two letters of recommendation from two physicians that I worked with. And I probably asked them maybe in like February. And they submit them in like early May. So I would just give them like a few months heads up. Also, if you're in a job and you might be leaving the job or something like that, and you want to ask that person for a recommendation, I would recommend asking them, maybe before you leave. And then I also had a letter of recommendation from a PA that I shadowed. So that's very appropriate to ask people that you shadowed, especially if you spent like a fair amount of time with them for a letter of recommendation too.
And I also think it's important to those letter of recommendations are very important for your applications. It's just one of the most important part of your application. You just don't uh, like ask anybody. Ask someone who can speak well on your behalf. Like they can really show the true you at work or at shadowing or whatever, whoever you want to ask them. It's not like, oh, it's not a requirement to check, honestly. You have to be a little bit like careful about it and make sure you have good letter of rec because that can really, really boost your application. And if you are applying right now, uh, maybe like just go and look for people if you don't have anybody, like look for people in a school, as Madison said. But if you're someone who is taking about PA as a future like career and like you're still working on it, I feel like it's very, very important to stay in touch and build that relationship with that person. For example, if I wanted to have one of my letter of recommendation from my supervisor at work, because many school they want that as a requirement. But I also personally wanted to have like a supervisor letter of rec in my application. I thinking about that from the first day of work, I made sure that person knows me. I create that relationship. It was like he was such a great person anyway, so it was so easy. He's done letter of rec for many students before, so I enjoyed having that close relationship with him. But he personally knew me, and he actually had we sat down together, we talked about my experiences. He asked me about my experiences at work as an EMT and how that impacted me and incorporated those in my letter of rec. So it's just make sure that your letter of rec is very unique to you and it shines your strengths, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I'll second that. I think also like for me, I think make friends with your professors if you can while you're in undergrad. I remember I hated physics. I struggled with physics so much. So I was at my professor's office hours all the time trying to understand the material. And in that moment, I just took the time and he got to know me, I got to know him, and he wrote me the best letter. Like I'm like, oh, thank God I struggled so much with physics because I made good friends with him and he, got me into Stanford. So yeah, just get to know them during office hours or yeah, and then what other, oh, I also had a physician and I was doing research, so I had a PhD also write the other letter and a PA. So those were, yeah, just as you're going throughout your medical career, just know that networking is very, very important, and those connections you're gonna need in the future. So yeah, just start building those connections while you're in undergrad.
The next question I'm seeing is, do you think research experience and highlighting this in your application helped you stand out at a rigorous school like Stanford?
Yes. Okay, sorry, I jumped into that because I felt close to this one. I have not published any paper. My only research experience was I was helping. I forgot the what they call me at the time. It's just I think research assistant. I was a research assistant at the lab working with the PhD student, like running errands basically, which is a great research experience. But I did not have any paper published, and I did not know about the process of it. which I wish I did. Because schools like Stanford, you are having a project, you are doing a capstone project, which is like a thesis statement. And I am learning, and Stanford is great in like, or our PI is great in teaching us and makes us stay on top of it. And I'm learning a lot, but it was actually a little bit of a learning curve. And if you have that like in you, it's very important. Also, a lot of other schools they have like research as a graduation requirement. It's good to have that background walking in, knowing that this is something that you have to work on alongside with your rigorous amount of stuff that you have to learn. It is important if you're trying to get into a researcher school. Also, schools like Stanford, because a lot of people think about PA as like, oh, we only like working as a in the field, like as a provider. But what I found being in Stanford is that a lot of PA they dedicate their life to mostly to research, which is great. This is something that I knew it existed, but I didn't know like how much of PAs they dedicate their career to this. And if you're something, I remember I was working with another PA student trying to get into schools, and she only wanted to do research. She was like, I want to apply to Stanford because I want to be a research PA. So it is important. If you can, and if you think researching is something that you might want to do in the future, having experience and talking about it, because I know the friend of mine who I work with, she in her interviews talked a lot about why she wants to get in Stanford because of the research opportunity.
I also want to talk about like how you could get research experience. So straight out of undergrad, I didn't really have any research experience. What I ended up doing was I just went on Google and I was like, I had an interest on veterans with PTSD. Since I was in the Marine Corps, I saw a lot of things that I wanted to have an impact on. So I looked up PhDs in Chicago doing research on veterans with PTSD. And I literally got like 10 of them and I emailed them and I'm like, hey, do you guys need a volunteer? I'm like willing to work any hours, like I just want to get volunteer experience. And only one emailed me back and she was like, I would love to have you work at my or volunteer at my lab. And then 1 month into it, she ended up hiring me. So it's like, honestly, I just threw like it was by chance, but like those are the kind of things that you have to do as a pre-PA, pre-med, whatever, to really get that experience. And then out of that research, I got 4 publications and a lot of posters. So
Also, like I'd go off it and just say like don't be afraid and feel like you have to have a bunch of research. I've like done different research things. I started as a microbiology major when I was in college, so I did like one summer internship where I was in a microbiology lab and realized like I don't like bench research and I was like having a little crisis. I'm like I just spent this whole summer doing this. What am I going to do? And I moved on and worked in a kinesiology lab for a year and like counted people's steps and was like, oh, like this is more enjoyable. Like I can do this. But then after college, I didn't do research. So don't force yourself, like, don't be afraid to try things, but also don't force yourself to do something you don't like because there's plenty of things out there that you'll find that you do like.
Yeah, just seconding that. I have zero research experience, and all the experience that I have is through this program. So if it's not so like Taylor said, if it's not something that you want to do, then I would say like, like don't force yourself to do anything like that. But if it is, and there's a lot of opportunities, and some of the panelists spoke on how you can do that.
Yeah, research is very diverse. It could be clinical research, it could be bench research. Just got to do what you enjoy. So the question I ask is before we go is if, and I'm going to ask each one of you, if you go back in your journey and do if you would redo your whole process of getting into PA school and everything, what would you do the same? What would you do differently? And what advice would you give yourself?
I would tell myself to not worry, you get in, because I was absolutely sure that I'm not gonna get in anywhere, and I don't know why, but I ended up getting into a few schools. Like, you get in. It's if you put in hours, you get in. And if it's not the first time, it doesn't matter. You eventually get in. You will get in. I can't emphasize that enough. You just have to be there and try again if it didn't have it for the first time, or take a gap year and like do then afterwards. I would do that. Maybe there's something that I want to say. It doesn't really answer this question, but I really wanted to talk about this in here before I leave, because I think it's very important. When I was applying, I talked to a lot of PAs, and some of them were recently graduated, like they weren't like really, really like far away from applying. And a couple of them told me that it's very important that my application has a theme to it. And by that, I mean like I can, throughout my entire application and my portfolio, I can show schools that I have a mission in mind. And I think that is very, very, very important. As Justice says, it does not matter what you do. It does not matter how you approach it. It matters that it comes from you, it's unique to you, and you can speak about it. And that's what the schools are looking for. And I think my colleagues can agree with that.
Yeah, honestly, going off of that, I would just say be present in whatever you're doing. And that sounds really cliche, but like, I mean, like actually, because I feel like we get, I mean, just the culture that we live in, I feel like we get very caught up in like that we need to do this to get here. And we're so focused on like getting here. Whereas like the value is in literally like what you're doing, like the classes you're taking right now, the experience you're getting right now, the people that you're talking to right now, that's gonna build the foundation to where like once you get here, everything will fall into place. So like don't focus so much on just like hitting those things. Like set up a system like for you to hit them, and then now like just really be present. Learn from every patient that you're gonna have. Learn from every provider that you're gonna speak to. I kind of wish that like if I had to change one thing, like it would be that. I think it would be not just like trying to like clock in hours, but genuinely like every experience, like being like, what can I learn from this? Now, obviously, like you're gonna get burnt out. You can't learn from every experience when you're working, especially when you're working like a tough job. But I mean, just kind of keeping that overall attitude of like always trying to learn, always trying to build, because this is a lifelong thing of healing people, and you'll never stop learning how to better do that.
Yeah, I really agree with everything that Justice and B have said. I would say one regret I have from my process of applying is I had an interview at like well, my first interview was like one of my top schools, and I ended up getting waitlisted, and it just like really, really brought me down. And I think I just became so hyper focused on getting into this school, and like I was checking the forms all the time. Don't check the forms. Don't do it. Don't do it. I know you're going to, but don't. They're very anxiety producing. And I think that I just was like such a ball of like stress and everything. And I wish I would have just like taken a step back and just known that it was going to be okay, and that I like didn't have to get into this school. Like it was all going to be okay. So I think that's like my biggest piece of advice. Like when you're interviewing, it's such a stressful time, but just like know that there are so many schools out there. And if you get waitlisted or if you don't get into a school, it was for a reason and you're supposed to end up somewhere else.
Oh my God, the the forums. I think I had the same regret because I think I was going through things like that. I was going through like there was this book that has all the PA schools in it, and it has all the requirements, all of the stats for like the students that got accepted in the previous year. And like I would go through those and just be like, oh my gosh, like I'd be stressing myself out. And so like I almost didn't apply the year that I did because I was like, there's just no way. Like I don't qualify. Like I can't, I'm not gonna get in. Like I'm not gonna waste money right now because I'm not ready. And I think like that was probably what I regret most, putting myself through that. I feel like right now, like we always tell ourselves and we hear it so much, like give yourself grace, give yourself grace. And I wish I had given myself grace back then because I was fine. Like I got into multiple schools and it worked out. Like I just wish that I didn't stress myself out as much. And then I think he also asked what's something that we're glad that we did, and I'm glad that I took that gap year. Honestly, like oh yeah, that gap year was super helpful for me. But yeah, just be yourselves, trust in the process. You guys got this.
Yeah, I'd say going off of that point, just like trusting in yourself. I know for me, even just like reaching out for recommendations, like I knew a lot of people through working with people and shadowing, but still like I put the pressure on myself of like, oh my God, like if I ask these people to like help me get in and then I don't get in, like that's people that I'm letting down and like this is gonna put a workload on them too. But really just like giving yourself the opportunity to ask for that help and communicating what your goals are, and getting those recommendations. Just like don't stress about it. Everybody asks for them. Like they're used to people asking, but it is something that you're going to need. So like just really try to be on top of that and um, do that. And one of the things definitely like working and being in the ER and having that experience was huge. I'm glad that I didn't go straight in. There was a lot of things that I learned just working with people and about medicine that I think if I had started PA school without any of that background, it would have been a lot more overwhelming, and there would have been a lot more to learn. So.
Yeah, for me, I think I would have been a lot kinder to myself. I think I put so much pressure as being like first generation. Like I have to do this it was not only I have to do this for myself, this is my family, right? Who I'm trying to make proud. And I think that that pressure just like was so heavy. And I wish I could go back and tell myself, like, it's okay. Like, you're doing everything right. Basically, what everyone else said. I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I think as I was in research and in medicine, I realized that not a lot of people had the same background that I did. So that was very difficult because I thought like, okay, well, is it possible for me to even get into a PA program or for me to even get into medicine? And I think that those negative thoughts like really impacted me a lot. But now like I'm at Stanford, right? It's like for me, it's just like I can't believe it's been such an amazing journey and I've learned a lot. I think the gap years were so important. I found myself, I found who I was as a person aside from finding what I wanted to do in medicine. If I could go back in time, I think I would shadow more providers early on. That way I would have known exactly what I wanted to do and not have been so like undecided for so long. But yeah.
Alrighty. So any last words of wisdom from anyone?
I'll share something. So I was actually talking, I don't know if you guys know about National Latino Physician Day, but Dr. Galvez and Dr. Cesar, I went to one of their events and I remember he said, just know that your Latinidad is your superpower, right? Like, so your background basically is your superpower. And I just want to like say that to you guys. What you could fill it with whatever you want, like your first generation or your first gen is your superpower, right? Because you're providing a unique perspective to medicine that no one else has. And I think that that's very important because you're able to understand a patient at a different level than what others can. And that's important. We need it. And so just remember that as you're going through your journey.
And I want you to remember that this is medicine and it's gonna be tough, and you're gonna face tough moments from the moment that you decide to do this, which is your undergrad like requirements, your application requirements, and as all of us are going through right now, it's the own PA school is also very difficult. Just mentally prepare yourself for that and give yourself grace, as everybody said, and know why you're here. I think people mention it, shadow, put yourself in those positions, see how much you like it, and just come to PAs because you're gonna get in. I gotta say it 1,000 more times. You will get in. There is gonna be one school that wants you, and just make sure that you want that too. And this is a very, very important because you're gonna remind yourself of why are you here constantly throughout the school and as well as like after school, because I'm pretty sure the job is going to be as tough as the PA school too, especially first few years. Just know why you're here and just root for that. Use your superpowers, as she said, and like know that you have those superpowers and rely on that and just um have a solid like decision of why are you doing this. I think it's really important because you're gonna go back to that a million times.
Yeah, really quickly, just really push your boundaries. Really push your boundaries and ask a lot of questions. I think, especially, I mean, I know just when I was in undergrad and stuff, I was very scared to like ask questions, ask, how do I do this? Like doing things like that. But like, just get out of that habit now. So whatever patient care experience that you're getting, ask the provider, oh, why did you order this? Like, why? What's going on here? Oh, how do you do this procedure? Like, the worst that again, the worst that somebody could say is no, and they usually won't do that. Most people love to kind of like help people who want to be in their position. So ask questions, ask how to do things, and like I said, like really push your boundaries. So ask, how do you put in the IV? How do you read a CKG? Just any little thing that you can add, because it's not even so much you're gaining that medical knowledge or technical knowledge or anything like that, but you're getting out of the habit of like keeping to yourself. Like get into the habit of putting yourself out there and like I said, just pushing your boundaries because that's how you grow.
All righty. Well, we would love to be here till 10 o'clock at night, but some of us have to work and some of us have to sleep and other things to do. Thank you everyone for coming on a Friday night. Thank you, Karina, for getting your classmates to show up. And we will have the dean of the PA program at Stanford speaking in a couple of weeks, and we'll post that on our website, and you'll get their notification and on our socials. So, thank you again, and have a great evening.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you guys. You guys have a good one.